Today we're going to be talking about the 13 colonies, and more specifically New England colonies, which are the red areas up here. And you have Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. Go to the next tab. You can see the color code here. So these areas, which are now present-day United States, were some of the New England colonies. And Massachusetts was founded by John Winthrop, was a very strict Puritan who came from Europe, thought that they should build a colony or city upon a hill so all eyes would be on them, and that city on the hill eventually became Boston. The next colony was settled was Rhode Island, and that was set up by Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, both of whom were expelled from the Puritan colony of Massachusetts for speaking out against the Puritan religion. The next one is New Hampshire, founded by John Wheelwright, and Connecticut, who is founded by Thomas Hooker. And so some of the characteristics of the New England areas, poor soil and rocky areas which were left by the glaciers that had run across North America and left rocky deposits kind of all over. There were short rivers which didn't leave enough water to fertilize some of these areas, so therefore the soil was poor. And so it didn't allow for large agricultural areas either. And so you can see at the bottom that the major resources were lumber and fish from the rivers and also then the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so if you lived in the New England colonies at this time, some of the major areas that you would take place in would be agriculture. They raised dairy cows and sheep, fishing, cod, herring, also whales. They would use all of the whales' blubber for oil and also meat. The forestry products were used for houses and ships. And also, if you were not involved in the first three, then you were more than likely into trading or commerce. And the triangular trade is where a lot of people got their supplies from. The colonies would send lumber back to Europe, England more specifically, and then England would send their finished goods to Africa, and Africa would send slaves to the West Indies or the colonies, and that was known as the Middle Passage. And so those three areas, the three legs of the journey, formed a triangle, and so that is why it is called the triangular trade. Daily life in the colonies was pretty simple. The men and the boys were outside farming or hunting, and the women and the girls spent most of their time preparing food around the houses. They did have time, however, the children, that is, they did have time to play games such as tag, kickball, or hopscotch, though any sort of emotion or disobedience at that time was not tolerated, and they were punished for that. Education, you were taught at home most often, taught to read and to write. Most often you were taught to read the Bible. And if you were a wealthy person or from a wealthy family, you would have a private person or private tutor come to your house and help teach you other subjects, one being Latin, which was obviously very popular at that time. Until, I can't remember the exact date, I think it was 1647, the colonies said that if you had more than 50 families in your colony or in your town, they had to start a public school. So then everybody was able to go to school. The next one is religion. And the Puritans in Massachusetts were very strict. they wanted to be able to practice their own religion, their own way, and so that was one of the reasons why they left England. They did not want people to disagree with them. They thought that people speaking out would be a problem for their society. Once one person started, then others would start, and it would be an issue. And the biggest thing about their religion is it was very strict. Every person went to church on Sunday. If you skipped, you were punished. And the services lasted most of the day. Some of the things about the English settlers, as they started to move further west, they ran into conflicts with Native Americans. And that is something that you will see throughout the colonies and throughout United States history. So as the English colonists started to move west, they were on to Native American lands, and Native Americans believed that nobody owned the land and that they could share it, which ends up leading to conflict. King Philip's War, where many colonists and Native Americans are killed. And then the other part of the conflict in the colonies was back up to Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, who spoke out against the Puritan religion, and they were later expelled, and they go on to start the colony of Rhode Island. So, Boston being the main city at this time, there are some firsts that come out of the Massachusetts colony. I'm going to share a few of them. One of them being the first Thanksgiving in 1621. The first university, which is Harvard, which is still in operation today. The first public library, Boston. The first Revolutionary War battle was at Lexington in 1775. The first railroad, the first typewriter, the first Christmas card, the first telephone, the first basketball game, and the first subway in 1898. So, those are the basic facts that you need to understand for the New England colonies, and we will talk more about this when you come to class.